Yeah, and we are live. Hey guys, welcome back to Critical African Thinkers. Welcome back to the conversation. Today we're going to be having a new twist to our live streams, where previously we'll be focusing on social issues, race, and all that. But today we're going to be focusing on positive masculinity. Okay, Steve is back here. So we're going to be focusing on positive masculinity, and we have a guest today who she's joining us for the first time. Coach Love Erica. I hope I'm right in that. Coach Love Erica, right?
It's if you want to find me on YouTube, it's Coach Erica Love, but I just go by Coach Love.
Coach Love. Okay, good. So, Coach Love, welcome today. We're going to be getting to know you more as the conversation proceeds. So, just so my audience, so you know, I opened up a Discord channel specifically for those of you who are subscribed to the channel because I've heard that some of the time you don't get enough notifications when I post new videos or when I'm about to go live, and you like to be a part of the live streams. So you can just go to the description box of this video itself, and you can gain access to the Discord channel. That is a place where we can get to interact. You can tell me what videos or what ideas you would like me to cover in these live streams, and you can be a part of the live stream as well. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, I just activated sort of the super chat and the super sticker function. So you can support the channel during the live streams. You can make donations in the super chat and the super sticker. In the chat box, you're going to see a dollar sign by the right of it, and you can just, most of you are already familiar with how that works. So, without further ado, let's get into our conversation for today. But before we start that, let me just introduce our guest a little bit. She has to do her introduction by herself because I always like people to tell us about themselves. They can tell us about themselves better than any other person introducing them. But if I wanted to say anything about Coach Love, I would say that she is a very, very pleasant person. She has a pleasant personality. She has a very pleasing personality. And that was something I picked off even from the first time I interacted with her. So, Coach Love, would you just like to just introduce yourself to the audience, and then we can kick off from there.
So, one of my greatest desires is to understand God's creation a bit better, and I have been pursuing that for a number of years. In doing so, it's drawn me closer to looking at men separately and women separately as a group. Not because we are so different initially, but we are treated so different in our journey in life. So, um, as it relates to positive masculinity, I realize that the message towards men needs to be different so they can hear it. Now, I'm going to back up a little bit because I want to talk about how I began to explore and notice things within human nature in my professional career. I started off in recruitment, healthcare recruitment, and I worked with physicians who worked at military treatment facilities. And I started to notice very different distinctions in their personalities and their desires, really different from those who might act in a support role. And then the tension in between the different profession levels. Now, I'll you might think this was just power and education, but what I saw was a desire to be acknowledged and heard. And so that's what got me all interested. That's kind of my background. And I hope I help you understand a little bit more about me.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for that. So, that was just a little bit introduction into who Coach Love is. Now I wanted to explore something with you. So something that we were talking about before the stream started. you are doing currently, you're doing this bearded mug challenge. So do you want to give
Yeah.
us a bit of a background as to how it came about? Because you're asking men to send the pictures of themselves holding a mug, especially men
Hmm.
who are bearded. So what's the philosophy behind it, and how did it come about in the first place?
Well, in America, another word for face is mug, right? This is my mug. That is your mug, okay? And then I'm all about positive masculinity. I've been walking down this road for some time. I had the pleasure of meeting Steve and Mr. Kalu, and I think they're very fine gentlemen. And I had a long conversation with Steve. And then I think the very next day or so, I saw a picture of him holding his coffee mug. And I said, oh my goodness, that is such a good picture of a positive man. And then the juices started flowing. I got on the phone and I called a friend, and we were just kind of running some ideas back. And then I reached out to Steve and asked him if we could do something with his picture, and what did he think about this idea of bearded mugs. And, he was game. And thus it started. It just took off. And I'm loving it.
Wow.
I'm loving this journey.
Yeah, yeah, I'm loving it too. I've gotten to see a lot of very handsome men. I mean, they're making me a bit jealous when I
Isn't
saw Steve
it?
and I saw Mr. Pelos, and I'm like, this is so. There's nothing here. There's,
Well, you want to know
but
something? I want you. Oh, look at him. He wants to model. He wants to model. It's so beautiful, right? It's so beautiful. It is so beautiful. But I want to talk about another piece of it, because the whole piece that we're going to push forward is masculine mugs. Okay, so anybody can have a masculine mug. So if you don't have a beard, please send in a picture of you holding your mug, right? um, so that represents positive masculinity and your endorsement of that particular idea. So that's good, right? But the bearded mug idea is a challenge. So if you have a beard, I want you to take this challenge, hold it up close and smile pretty, and let us girls just, Google over how handsome you look, and we can get the word out regarding positive masculinity. What do you think, Charles?
I think it's a fantastic idea. I mean, one of the things that we're going to touch on today is how so little about the positive sides of masculinity currently is being talked about. If you look at the
Hmm.
media space, one of the very nasty prefixes that you hear being added to the word masculinity today is toxic. You understand? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
a lot of people, when they just hear the word masculinity, even without the prefix, somehow they just associate it with something that's negative, something that's bad. So I think that this is incredibly important, that men are being shown in a positive light, and that masculinity is shown as something that is beautiful, that is good, and not something that is associated with something sinister or anything bad. So
Mhm.
I think you're onto something here, and I think it's incredibly important that we have things like this. Yeah, so it's great. It's great. I love it. I love it. I love it. I really do love it.
I want to begin the conversation and talk about how did we get to the place where toxic masculinity became generic behavior for masculinity in the first place. I think we should talk about that. And definitely, this is my opinion, but this is just something I observed, that all male behavior, or sorry, a very wide range of very bad male behavior is accepted as still being a man and still being masculine. And so once that became a comfortable standard and very bad behavior was allowed to be associated with manhood, I think that just stripped the honor, all of the honor, out of being a good man, out of being a man.
Yeah. But I wanted to explore with you so that we are on same terms. What is masculinity to you? When you hear the word masculinity, what comes to mind? What are those things that define masculinity to you as a woman?
Mm. So, um, for me, patience, kindness, humility, integrity, um, are all things that I look towards for masculinity. Not that those things are not associated with femininity. Femininity. It's just that I want men to understand that those behaviors are essential when it comes to being a man.
Okay, but those features or those things that you just described, is that what any other person who hears the word masculinity, is that what they typically think about? Is that what would naturally occur to them, that okay, someone who's patient, who's kind, who's humble, and all that can be
Mhm.
regarded to be masculine. Now, I want
Mhm.
the reason I'm saying this is that I want you to give sort of a definition that is distinct and juxtaposed to say femininity. You understand? Because
Mhm.
these other virtues, they are virtues or they are characteristics that we can just easily apply to being feminine. So, what are these distinctive things that would make that defines masculinity, those things that are distinctive to males that defines
Mhm.
masculinity? Yeah.
So I think maybe that's the trouble in itself, quite honestly, because if I define femininity as sugar and spice and everything nice, but I define masculinity in things that are not so nice and not so sweet and not so pleasantly spicy, then I'm already in trouble. I think that we need to teach people how to be feminine and how to be masculine by being a good human. And men are going to be a good human the way men express being a good human. Women are going to express being a good human in a feminine way. But when we take away a man's ability to communicate well, to communicate with sensitivity, to communicate with honor, and or even embrace some of the more feminine traits like perhaps even crying or being emotional, you know, um, if we call those traits feminine, I think we're in trouble. Because
Okay, I
can a man
hear
be
you.
emotional? Can a man be emotional and still be masculine?
Of course, of course.
And what
I
what
think
emotions are safe? What emotions are safe for a man and still be able to claim his masculinity?
the whole range of human emotions are safe for men. I think it's a matter of degrees. That's where the distinction is. Understand? Of course,
So
men can.
wait, hold on 1 second. A matter of degree. So you're trying to tell me that somehow, some way, it is not okay for a man to be tragically broken without losing his manhood?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I think it's okay for a man to be tragically broken when the occasion demands it. Um, but however, we do understand. We do
But when
understand.
is that occasion? When is that occasion? And is that occasion different than when for a woman?
Yes, it is.
Tell me about
Yes.
that.
Okay.
Tell me about that.
For example, if you are in a situation that is dangerous, that requires you to very focused and clear, and take very precise action, even if at that point in time you're supposed to have an emotional reaction. As a man, you sort of have to put that in check so that you can be able to perform a certain function at that particular point in time. Doesn't mean you're not feeling it. You understand? So that's the sense in which I'm saying that for a man, it's a matter of degrees. So if if the woman is if she's there and she's emotional about the whole thing, she's feeling scared and all that, the man has to sort of, he has to present that strong persona to be able to weather that initial stage. And you can have your emotional moments any other time, but at that particular point in time, I don't think it would be the best time for him to be that emotional. So that's the sense in which I'm saying it. Steve is really having trouble tonight. I just hope he's able to settle this thing, because his voice is incredibly important in this conversation. So, what do you think about what I said?
I think that that's hard, not because I don't expect the man to be strong and have a level head in that conversation, but I think that if he does not have a level head in that conversation, I don't think it makes him less of a man. I
I
think
don't.
that makes him. I think that makes him someone who's vulnerable, and I think that many women in the situation that you describe might actually be the calmer party. I think it's very possible for that to occur. I happen to be a very level-headed woman, and it is because I'm a patient woman. I think the thing that makes most emotions and most thought processes um, focused and balanced is when you're able to calm yourself, be patient, and look at the information in front of you versus what you are projecting it to be.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and in a weird way, I do agree with what you're saying. You understand? Um, but in we have seen in practical situations,
Hmm.
you as a woman, you're very level headed and all that, and you then you ask yourself, is it typical? Does it occur naturally to you, or did you have some level of training, some level of personal training for you to be able to get to that point where you don't just let your emotions rule you in certain, maybe taking decisions or doing certain things at a particular point in time? You get, if if we're going to look at we were going to look at human behavior as it is currently in its raw form, without people having to um, go through some sort of personal development in itself, you will find that men are skewed towards being much more emotionally restrained in certain situations, while women are sort of much more emotionally liberal in that's in a similar situation. You get it. But um it isn't that all men are like that. Neither is it that all women are like that. But if you want to look at it in a matter of aggregates, or you want to look at it in a matter of in media, and you want to say, okay, what's the percentage of people that might act in this way? You're going to find men typically acting in a particular manner, and women acting in a particular way. So that's what I think. And also, anecdotally, I have seen women who, I've heard women who say that, oh yeah, they want a soft, sensitive man and all that. Even in comedy, female comedy, you hear all that. But then they say when it gets too much, it'll be like, why are you acting this way? That might just be societal. That might just be societal conditioning. But I think it goes much more than that. I still think that there's some very primal reason why a woman would react to a man who is just as emotionally effusive as any other woman that she knows. Even though she wants him to be vulnerable, she also wants him to not be as vulnerable all the time. To present that strong persona and be vulnerable in moments that it truly really counts.
I'm sensing that you're using the word vulnerable in as a synonym for imbalance. And so
Mhm.
that's what it feels like, meaning that um, your expectation for a man is to basically to be the calm party, the person who can clearly express himself or think clearly in times of challenge and difficulty. Am I understanding you right?
To an extent, the latter part, yes, yes, I would say.
And I just don't know that we are setting our men up for success when we do that. And I do not feel as if we're setting up a good dynamic for partnership because we're creating an unnecessary competition between a man and a woman automatically, meaning you are supposed to be more like this than I am.
Uh,
If we just look at where the person's natural strengths are and build on their strengths, then we are in we put ourselves in a better position for success. That said, um, if anyone, be it man or woman, is volatile, then they make themselves unproductive, and that is not a desirable quality in anyone. In addition, I think that men skip over or skip over a lot of emotions because they are taught to skip over a lot of emotions, and you get a very basic span of emotions from a man because that's the only way they feel safe expressing themselves. That's the only way they feel manly expressing themselves. For instance, you have a man who is stilly silent. He's happy when he has food, or he's angry when something has gone wrong. And if that's the only um, basket of emotions that we expect from a man, we're going to disappoint ourselves, and that's dysfunctional. And even if that that's the man has a greater access of emotions at home when he's safe in his household, if he doesn't have that full range when he's out in the world, then we're creating toxicity because it creates pressure, undue pressure. We're creating an avenue where there is dependency on external things to create connection. You know, a man, I think, not a man, but humans in general need to be able to create connections readily in and outside of the relationship. We can't marginalize them in that way. I think we force them to be toxic.
Hey,
okay.
you mind if I jump in?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mr. Ben.
I want to make a quick. Yeah, because I want to make a quick comment. I'm not tight with my situation, but yeah. But as you were saying, I think a lot of what you're saying is correct. But wouldn't men's limited range of emotions actually be a benefit into building connection sometimes? Because maybe you need somebody who's going to be the painstaker. Like I grew up in a culture where men were looked at as a painstaker. Like growing up, we always say, "Take it like a man, take it like a man." But I think
So are
it's a
you saying
benefit
that
to that
pain
because
taker? Are you saying the word pain?
if he is a pain taker, yeah, yes. I grew up with a mentality that a man should be a pain taker, right? Like,
Pain,
like, like,
pain.
like, yes. The same way you say painstaking, the same way you
Okay.
have painstaking, you have a painstaker, right? And that painstaker, nine times
I'm
out
not
of ten,
sure,
was supposed to be the man. You were expected to be that.
I'm not sure if I
So I'm
understand
saying,
the word you're saying, but it feels like you're saying that he should carry the brunt. Pain taker, pain taker.
yeah,
Okay.
as a painstaker. Okay, I'm sorry. I should move my mic over here. Anyway, I was saying maybe the limited range of emotion or the limited range of expression is actually a benefit to society if you understand that maybe men have a purpose and that is to be the painstaker. Maybe those restrictions, those limits, those boundaries set upon men were there to have a beneficial impact on society as a whole, because you needed somebody to take the pains that society needed to build itself on, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually, whatever you needed to bear a burden. So and if you emotionally break down, you won't be able to bear the burdens that you needed to bear. So I mean, I think if men understand their role as these bearers of burden or pains takers, I think there is a lot of bliss and fulfillment in knowing who you are and being able to function properly as you feel your creator intended you to function. Thank you.
So, what I'm hearing is that I'm almost hearing a pushback because what I think a man um, should be doing emotionally, you gentlemen might be thinking I'm making him soft. That's really, is that, I mean, is that right? Am I getting you
No,
right?
no. Okay, now let me circle back to the point you made earlier about letting people sort of build people around their natural tendencies, right? Their natural
Mhm.
strengths. Now, has it ever occurred to anyone that there are typical male strengths that may predispose them to being emotionally more restrictive than women, if that's the natural tendency, if that's what's the natural predisposition of men, tilts them towards. I'm not saying all men. Let's say a critical mass of men, and to even to varying degrees, because no two men are the same, no two women are even the same. You understand? But if you wanted to put in that sense, then from what you said, then you might still get the same result. If you wanted to build around the natural tendencies or the natural talents of human beings, take for example, men are more interested in things, women are more interested in people. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's something that I've come to understand. So that's why you find more women in the nursing profession and all that, in childcare and all that, where they have to deal with people. You find more men in doing abstract things. Find more men doing things that have to do with their hands and construction and all that. So it doesn't mean that there are no women who are going to do those things, who are attracted to things. It doesn't mean there are no men who are attracted to people. You understand? But on a very general basis, there's a critical mass of men who would act in a particular manner, in particular way, naturally predisposed to act in that way, while women are predisposed to act in another particular way.
So, um, that feels like a bad example, and I'll tell you why. Because it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Not that I don't think there are differences between men and women emotionally, because I am a believer of there are more men who are sequential thinkers versus women who have thinking that overlap. I think there's a book and it says men think like waffles and women think like spaghetti, and men have an actual nothing box where you actually think about nothing. These are really big generalities, and they're not saying all women and they're not saying all men. Okay, so I want to get that out there. That said, when you use the examples of the world, particularly in nursing, or you could even say teaching. Those are two people professions, but those were professions that women were allowed to go into. It's not because that's where women's talents lie. It's just that that's where they were allowed to thrive. Um, then let me just say this: if I use that very same thinking when it comes to racial things, you would begin to scratch your head. You would say, well, no. Because if I said, well, most leaders are white men, therefore white men are good leaders or the best leaders, you would give me immediate pushback. And that would sound strange to you. right? In the same way, what you said sounds strange to me and
Oh,
inaccurate.
okay. See, race doesn't translate directly. Differences in races doesn't translate directly into differences in gender. Gender is or sex. That is ubiquitous between races and all that. So we can't make a direct comparison and translation in that regard. Now you said
But
something
in the
about
but hold on, but in the self-fulfilling prophecy idea, I
I
can
have a
I can
point.
assure you,
I have a
okay,
point.
I can assure you that there are a host of people who believe in that way, and so that
It,
is
it
why
doesn't matter. It
I
doesn't
connect
matter. It
those
doesn't
two
make it.
together.
It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it for the fact that people are thinking that way. Doesn't make it right.
And that's
Okay.
what I'm saying. It does not make it right. I'm agreeing
So
with you, gender and race wise.
okay. So I just want to push back on the idea where you said that those were the professions that women are allowed into. I don't think that's accurate. I think that it's more than natural
Historically,
predispositions. Um,
historically,
I,
historically.
I, I, okay, I don't know if you're familiar with the Scandinavian countries, Norway, Sweden, and all that, and they are sort of the most egalitarian society you could find on the planet. Now, what they discovered was that as the society got more egalitarian, the choices as the society became much more freer, where people could actually make individual choices for themselves, they found that men and women drifted more apart in terms of their career choices than
Mhm.
they were expecting it to close. But they saw that it was even much more there was even much more disparity in their choices than in societies that were not as equal. You understand? Because the women were freer to just pursue what they were naturally inclined to do. So while it might seem as if it's because women were not allowed into certain professions, but that simply isn't the case, or that hasn't been the case for at least the last 50 years, or maybe in the last 30 years. You understand? So when you're still seeing such huge disparities in terms of what women want to do, what men want to do, you can't simply just chalk it up to, well, this is what it's because women were not allowed into this, and because women were
Well,
allowed into that. So,
so when I say allowed, I mean historically, and once a pattern is set and a belief system is there, then there's still a pull towards that. And it's whether I can see myself doing this particular thing or not. So, um, one of the reasons why you have a lot of female nurses is because there already are a lot of female nurses. Representation matters, and you begin to see yourself doing the things that are familiar to people who are like you. So the fact that there are still gender pool in those particular roles simply doesn't surprise me. It simply that doesn't,
so
and I don't
how
think
do you
it's
explain the observations in the Scandinavian countries?
well.
Because
I
it's
that
for a very long time they have sort of very egalitarian, but they are finding men and women choosing traditionally different things. It's as if the women are just reverting to the
because it's
traditional.
because you revert back to what has always been done. Change is very difficult, particularly societal change. I'll give you an example. If you've ever told anyone to stand in a line, right? And you've taught them to stand in a line. And then you say, well, you don't have to stand in a line. You can just take a number, okay? There have been, there was a study where people still stood in the line. As a matter of fact, in Hawaii, um, they started to put their shoes, so they can still relax. They started to put their shoes in a line. And you don't even have to, but this is the way people have been taught. This is the way it's always been done. So you continue to do that, even though it is not necessary. And have you ever cut in front of someone in a line? It's a big deal. It, almost anywhere. People believe, oh, you're being unfair, and they will challenge you on that. So there is a societal pressure to be a certain way, even if the rules have changed. So you can change rules, but it doesn't change the expectation, the social expectation of behavior. So what I go ahead.
Okay. Maybe I'll just respond to this, and we'll sort of go back to our topic of discussion, which is trying to promote masculine, positive masculinity. But I
Hmm.
just wanted to get this thing out there that yes, there are all sorts of reasons why men and women act differently, and
Hmm.
one of them is societal pressures. You understand, but you still have to ask yourself, what are the percentage contributing factors? You understand. Um, it can't all be societal pressure.
Hmm.
Sometimes it has to be the natural. Except you're telling me that women have no natural predisposition at all, and that everything is
No,
socially
I didn't.
constructed.
I
Hey,
didn't
hey,
say
you mind if I jump in? You mind if I do a jump in real quick? Let me do a jump
yes.
in.
Go
I think I think you have a great point with the natural dispositions and the societal pressures, and I think a lot of times that we make a false dichotomy because if we had societal pressures, how did they come from? They originated from something, so there was something in nature or something about what the way we did something that formulated our societies to feel a certain way. So I thought so when we think about social constructs we have to think about in light of human nature too, because no matter what social construct you build, human nature is still in effect, and biology is still in effect, and our natural impulses are still in effect, and they shaped us more than we shaped it. In my humble estimation. Thank you very much.
so I agree that there are some predispositions, but I can give well, no, I can't give you the names, but I've certainly read of many cultures where women are responsible for the leadership. Women are actually responsible for hunting, and the men are more in a submissive role. So there are cultures out that, like that. That's not what we've been taught. That's not what's popularized, but that occurs. So what are those women somehow very, very different naturally? Is there something in them that's so very different? Are those men?
Let me jump in real quick with that. One more thing I just want to add, but how develop all those cultures and how far they go before they got conquered by a more masculine culture or patriarchal culture.
Well, they still exist. So um, I don't know,
we
but
don't we don't
wait, hold on one second. Hold on one second.
Okay.
But a man having a physical dominance is actually what we're trying to pull away from, because physical dominance right now is not necessarily helpful. It's helpful if you're going to have a fight, but these days fighting in that way is really not going to get you very far. You're more likely to, be attacked mentally and intellectually than you, matter of fact, emotionally, than you are to be attacked physically. As a matter, in addition to that, let me just say, I've been attacked emotionally far often more, than I've been attacked physically.
Okay. It doesn't even have to. Okay. In nature, in life, in what we've observed, there are rules and there are exceptions. You understand? And things are not defined by the exceptions. If you look at the majority of human society, even societies that were isolated from each other, from the continent of Africa to Europe to Asia to the jungles of the Americas, you find out that 99.9% of these societies are actually patriarchal, and
Well,
these societies did not have to learn from each other. You understand? And sort of the roles that the men played, even in societies that had no contact with each other, was very similar with other societies. You understand? So for the fact that we had some societies that sort of the roles were reversed is no indication that um, the other part was um, how will I put it, that the other part was wrong or the other part is not. It just shows us that this is a natural pattern where there are natural tendencies and there are deviations from it, but we're not going to define. For example, most human beings have 10 fingers, but there are some people who are born with six digits in one hand and the other, and maybe six in both hands, and they have 12. But we're not going to, in a biology textbook, you're not going to say that human beings have 12 fingers. No, because those are the exceptions. You're going to define a thing by the generality, by what is obtainable in the majority of human societies. And if you look at the majority of human societies, the men have always been responsible for the hard stuff, the war and all that. And if you even look at the physical build of a man, it sort of translates smoothly into being able to fulfill that role versus the woman who is much more nurturing. Take for example childbirth. For example, childbirth does a lot of things to a woman, you understand, where there's a bond that she shares. There's a bond the mother shares with the child that transcends what the father could ever physically share with the child, you understand. So biologically, there's already this predisposition into men acting differently, while women acting differently. So some of these things that we see today, there is a reason why they arose in the first place. Now we may have taken them to the extreme, but it doesn't mean that there were no objective reasons why they arose in the first place. Take warfare, for example. A mother who has a breastfeeding infant at her chest, how much more effective would she be um, on the war front? In those days, how much more effective would she be? She wouldn't be as effective because she'll be vulnerable, her child will be vulnerable. So it makes more sense for societies to have evolved in such a way that the women are okay, let them take care of the children, while the men who are not such burdened with child rearing can go out and do all those hard stuff. You get. And from there, other things can now be added on top of these natural tendencies, even the toxic things and all that. But doesn't mean that the underlying superstructure was faulty from the get go.
Okay, so I don't want you to think that it is my goal to take the exception and make it the rule. But the reason why I brought that up is because your argument projected the idea that this is automatically naturally occurring in society and as an absolute. Um, and that's simply not the case. But I want to go back to the original question. And really, what you're railing from is that a man is automatically more emotionally balanced, or they should be, than a woman. Like they should be automatically more emotionally balanced. And I believe that it is a woman's responsibility to be emotionally balanced and a man's responsibility to be emotionally balanced, and to act as a whole person. Um, I do not believe that it's okay for a man to become unhinged, nor do I believe that it is okay for a woman to just become unhinged. When times of trouble are there, I expect them both to be balanced, and
Well,
that is
your expectations doesn't mean that that's what would happen in reality. You
but
understand
what I'm saying.
what you
That's what we
what
want.
you
That's what we
believe.
want to move towards. That
Well, that's what we want to move towards. And maybe it's a good thing, it's a good idea of that may be a good place for us to go. You understand? But I don't think that we should try to sort of obliterate the differences between the sexes, because I think that there's beauty in diversity and that it just enriches the dynamics of male-female relationship if both parties are not just as equally behaving in a certain instance, in a certain condition, while not taking away the fact that men can be or men should be vulnerable. But also we also want to preserve that that's dichotomy, that tension, that's masculine energy versus the feminine energy that just makes life much more beautiful.
You
We
mind if I
don't
jump
want
in?
a bland, yeah, one second. We don't want a bland, we don't want a blurring of differences where it just become bland, that there's no distinguishing. You can't distinguish between feminine and masculine energy. Go ahead, Mr. Pelu.
Yeah, what I was gonna add is that you said we want to move to a certain direction, but how can you say we want to move? Like, who is we? I want you to explain who the we is. Who is we want? Like, did you take a survey? Did you have an election? Did you have
So,
a go around the world and say, okay, we want to do this, then a third? How do you formulate that we want to move in a certain direction,
so
and how do you formulate the direction that we're already coming from, and how you formulate that where you want to move is better than the direction that we came from? Thank you very much.
okay, so we and the people that I'm talking to, and I really wish Steve was up here as well, about positive masculinity, is that it is important to have a good understanding of your emotions and be able to fully express yourself, and not just have a handful of emotions available to you. You have to go beyond, I'm mad and I'm sad. You cannot expect yourself to, anybody, to be healthy if anger is, where they want to automatically go just because, they're sad for the day. You know, we men are It is more acceptable for a man to act out in anger than it is for him to cry. That's not okay. How about if something hurts you, you actually do cry versus punch somebody or hurt somebody or hurt yourself? Um, I haven't studied the statistics on suicide, but when I was talking to Steve the other day, he actually brought it up about the high rate in suicide. I did read the other day that in the UK, suicide is very high among women. I'm sorry, among men as well. So when you are only able to act out in anger when you are feeling unsafe or you're feeling sad as a man, that creates um, toxicity. It's unhealthy. It doesn't create positive masculinity.
Now it doesn't follow. Okay, now for that suicide statistics, I think I've seen something that says that more women attempt suicide, but more men kill themselves from suicide. That's because a man is more likely to employ deadlier means. You understand? So it isn't because that more men are depressed. It's just that a man is more likely to take a gun and blow his head off, or is more likely to use something much more drastic. While a woman might, she might use drugs. She might want to. You get in so it even shows in the differences when men and women want to kill themselves. They use different means of trying to do that, and the man's seems to just be much more effective. So it isn't because men are more depressed because they are emotionally repressed. It just shows that their methods of trying to kill themselves are much more effective. And this also ties to it also ties down to difference in natural tendencies. You understand?
Hmm.
Um, my point is disparities does not necessarily mean something is wrong. there
Hmm.
there, there are always going to be disparities, even when you have a utopian society. There are always going to
Hmm.
be disparities based on groups, based on gender, based on whatsoever thing. The disparity might be minute, might be big, but those disparities are going to be there. So if we're going to look at it and say, well, we have to bridge all disparities, then it doesn't mean that I don't think it's even going to be possible, because even two
I think we want to
individuals.
correct unhealthy disparities. I think if it is
Of
unhealthy,
course,
it is
of
quite
course.
unhealthy for men to be boxed in to anger. That is very unhealthy. Um, Men have to have a wider range of emotions acceptable within the confines of masculinity. They
Can I
just
jump
have,
in?
yes.
Let me do a jump in. Thanks. Thanks for letting me jump in. Yeah, I want to say yes. I see what you're saying, Miss Erica. I mean, Miss Coach Erica. But um, one thing I would like to add is that you might think they need a wider range of motion, but isn't the X factor about man is making tools and making adaptations? Like the thing that separates man from animals, that we're able to make tools. We have a certain physique and a certain brain that allows us to make tools. And tools are not just physical; tools are also emotional, psychological. So is that whenever there's a constraint, that you have a problem. Whenever a problem, you have the ability to solve the problem. So as a man, as a problem solver, is it more important do we find the right tools to process our emotions or have a wider range of emotions? Because even me, I don't have that much of a wide range of emotions, but I have a wide range of tools of dealing with my emotions, and I employ them in a daily basis, in daily practice, and daily meditation. Anyway, so I want to speak on range versus tools and applications to deal with the other things inside us and our impulses and things that make us cause us to feel the way we feel. Thank you.
I love that. I love that question. I want you to have the tools, but at the same time, when there is a guy who does have a wider range of emotions, I do not want his masculinity stripped from him. I want him to have access to those tools and still be able to be called masculine.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I don't want a man who doesn't have as wide a range of emotions but has tools to deal with it. I don't want him to be seen as toxic. You understand? But it seems
Mhm.
that that's the way it goes. Just because the man doesn't display that sort of emotion, then it is seen as, oh, that's a toxic behavior. You understand?
I so I reject that premise. I do not think that is toxic. So if you are a man and you actually only feel, um, a few emotions, that's fine. That's who you are. And that is not toxic. However, if you display that, if you have behavior associated with that, that is toxic, then we can't allow that. For instance, let's pretend that there is a man and he only has happy and sad. Now, this is ridiculous, right? But I'm only doing this to make a point. If a man who has a short range of emotions and he experiences happy and he laughs and he experiences sad and he destroys, then that is toxic. So, unfortunately, what I just explained is kind of a real life thing, that people experience in their household, not to that, limited degree, but because men often actually do have more emotions, but they have an inability to express them, or perhaps don't have the tools to properly express them, what comes out of them is joy when they're happy and destruction when they're not.
I agree 100% with you. I don't think that any bad behavior should be allowed in the name of masculinity. But it's just as saying that a man going out to break things when he's angry is masculine. As a woman who goes about to destroy the reputation of a person she doesn't like with gossip and all that as feminine. You understand? Those are
Yeah,
not
that is not feminine. Those,
exactly. So those are
mhm.
not those are just bad behaviors. Those are just toxic behaviors. You understand? And
But the
those are
reputation for
not.
men right now, one of the reputations for men right now that is out there is that is acceptable manhood. You know, that is not acceptable
It's
manhood.
not. It's not. It's not. I don't think. I don't think it's. I don't think people see that as acceptable behavior from men. just as much as people don't see gossip and reputation destruction as acceptable feminine behavior, those are errant feminine behavior. And these are the things you're talking about, men. Those are errant masculine behavior. You understand? That's not masculine and that's not feminine. Those are just, in a way, men and women sort of just express their negative sides in sort of in a different way. I would say.
Mhm.
You understand? Maybe if a man is in an altercation with another man, it is very easy for them to devolve into using fists because they're physical beings. You get? It doesn't mean it's acceptable, but that's what naturally tends to happen. For women,
Well, I think we are moving towards an idea of boys will be boys kind of thinking.
no,
Well,
no.
no. Well, hold on one second. If we're not, I do want to move on towards boys will be boys kind of thinking, because that is a part of toxic masculinity, behavior where we allow behavior that is unproductive, and then we excuse it under the title "boys will be boys"
Yeah.
kind of
Okay.
thing.
Before we continue, let me just remind the audience that I've set up a Discord channel where you can is in the description box. You can join the Discord channel so that we can. I can always let you know whenever I'm about to go live or whenever I post a new video. Because some of you have complained that you don't get the notifications, and when you want to be a part of the stream, you don't. It's after the stream is over before you get to see the notification. So with that, we can get to communicate and tell me exactly what topics you would like us to cover. Also, I've also activated the super chat and the super sticker function, so you can support the stream by donating via the super chat and the super sticker. So thank you. So let's go on with the conversation we're having with Coach Erica. The conversation is about promoting positive masculinity, and we have sort of been bantering with ourselves, but I think it should be done with the bantering. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Please also subscribe and ring the notification bell so that you can get those notifications. So
And
let's go on with the conversation, Coach Love.
I, I
Yeah,
do want to say these conversations are essential for positive masculinity. So I do not want anyone to think just because we're not landing on the exact same place all the time that this is bad. I think this kind of conversation is very good, because the fact of the matter is we're all finding our way. Now, that's just
true.
something, I think it's the truth. And I think there were a few points where we landed on together. Like we were like, oh, yes, we agree there. So I just wanted to point that out. And besides, if we completely agreed, this would be a boring conversation.
Exactly, exactly. So the fun is in having that. You agree with me then. You see, if men and women are just basically the same, it would be boring. You need to have that tension and that distinction.
Oh my God, Mr. Palou wants to say something.
Yeah, Mr. Billy, go ahead.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was saying, you said boys are things seen as positive, like bad behavior, like destroying things. But I never seen in my life where people say that it was a good thing that people go out to destroy things. I never seen that. If you can't please explain the cultures and places that say that, and is that decency or not? Because um um I mean I would say in all cultures that there is a sense of decency, and some things is not decent, and I don't see how those behaviors in any culture would become decent, and decency applies to both men and women. But let's get back to the masculinity part. Um, 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 you said that men should have a wider range of emotions or be able to express a wider range of emotions. But what if society puts a premium on men developing the skills? Should the society is why not? Why is men having a show expressing more and more range of emotions better than men developing the skills to deal with their emotional baggages, emotional problems? Shouldn't the society put a premium on educating men on their thought processes and to better handle their emotional well-being? Should education of men be a priority in these things? Thank you.
So I don't think it's either or. I think you're right. I think that we need to make it safe for a man to have a wider range of emotions, but to move the conversation more towards what Mr. Palou is advocating for. And I want you to know I advocate for this too, is for men to have the tools available to them to deal with the emotions that they have. And I think that um, they need to feel safe using these tools and whatever those tools look like. And it might be education on what emotions look like and how to deal with them, places they can go. But quite frankly, I believe that the greatest tool that we have is setting expectations and the camaraderie between men. For instance, what would you do if there was a man and he told you that he was, feeling undone and feeling sad, and it was perpetual? How would he be treated amongst his peers? You know, when your peers treat you as if somehow you've lost your masculinity because you're having difficulty navigating something, then I think perhaps there's stress there. And I definitely think we could do better.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I don't think that people or men should be judged in that manner, in that harsh manner, if they're not meeting up to certain preconceived notions or ideas of what it means to be masculine. You understand?
Hmm.
Uh, I don't subscribe to that because the worth of an individual is much more than take for example, is much the worth of a man should be much more than providing and care for his family or being the breadwinner and all that. What
Hmm.
happens if you lose your job? Should that be the end of your life? Should that be the end of your worth as a human being? So often at times, even men, we have taken on that sort of restrictive labeling or definitions of, okay, this is what you build your self-worth on, but it
Hmm.
doesn't it doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be that. It can be something better. But
Based off of our conversation, I want to see if I can find something. If you don't mind, I'm going
okay.
to go off screen for a second, and then you can bring me back up.
All
Okay?
right, no problem. Yeah. So Chloe, come on. I'll put the link. Let's talk. It's been a wonderful conversation to be having with Coach Love. She's a very pleasing and pleasant human being, and I've been enjoying my talk with her. Mr. Pilu is here with us, although we've been disagreeing a bit about, okay, what the approaches are in terms of what's acceptable male attitude towards female. But Chloe, call in. You have things to say. Go ahead, call in. Let me put the link again. Yeah. So Coach Love is just out for a bit. She wants to get some resources. Mr. Pelu, let's hear you. Let's hear you.
Okay. As for me, I really think that, yeah, I think men should be able to have express their more wide range, but it's how you express it and you need the tools of expression. I don't think it should necessarily be, oh, we need to make men like women and crybabies everywhere. No, I really don't believe in the crybaby stuff. I think we have too much of it now, and I think we're being coddled. And I don't think boys should be coddled. I think boys should be painstaking. Like, you should take pride and be able to take the pain, but you should have tools to process it, and it should be a premium to give people. the philosophical education. That's so for lack of a better word, or to be as broad as possible, the philosophical education that it takes to be a resolute and and even-minded person. But basically, we should have education in equanimity. Thank you very much.
Hold
Yeah.
on one second, because I haven't found what I'm looking for, but I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. I heard you say that I don't think that men should be like women, crybabies and stuff.
No. He said he doesn't think men should be
Oh,
crybabies.
I heard that. I said something along those lines. Yes, I did.
Yes, and so that makes you equate women with crybabies and femininity. Femininity. Well, maybe not femininity. Well, actually, yes, women being like babies, and I just think, I think that's not healthy. But I'll go continue to do my research. Hello, Chloe. How are
Hi,
you?
I'm good. How
Wonderful
are
to meet
you?
you. I'm
Chloe, are
looking for.
you
Huh?
Chloe, are you doing the mug challenge? Because I just saw you with your mug
Oh,
right now.
I'm just having some tea.
All right. We're going to do the challenge for women too. Mug
Oh, yeah.
challenge for women.
We have mugs too.
Anyway, welcome to the conversation. So you've been listening so far. So tell us
Yeah,
your thoughts. What do you
yeah.
think?
So I guess I will tell you, at least from my perspective and my background. So number one, I'm from a state where it's majority men. In Alaska, there are more like there's more than 50% men in Alaska. And then I also in education, like I went into a degree and field that is majority men. And then also in my work, I mostly work with men. And also growing up, like some of like my favorite shows kind of featured mostly men, not necessarily because um, there's this one particular show actually that's kind of a staple in Alaska is called the Red Green Show. And I think that that's a great example of like positive masculinity. But like the thing about that is one thing that it's very obvious to me is that um, when men do kind of share their emotions, all that kind of stuff, it does look different. And they might care about different things. And so I do think that there might be a little bit of concern of where if you're saying, oh, it doesn't look like he's fully expressing himself, but he just has different avenues to express themselves that a woman might not necessarily even want to go into that space or sees the point of it, but it's actually very important for men to do that. And so like the Red Green Show, it's about a men's lodge. There are no female characters whatsoever, and it's older men who kind of putter around and do like get into trouble that older men do with like lots of duct tape and sawzalls and maybe tinkering with things that they shouldn't do, having hubris of being able to do things that younger men did, and but still their friendships and their community, and but then like some of the jokes are, I don't know why women care about this thing, or I don't know why my wife is upset about this, but they have their things that might be petty for women, but they're very emotional about it, or they're very concerned about it. And so sometimes I feel like it seems like the streams are crossed, right? Because there are ways that men do connect and have expression, but I think in this pursuit of gender equality, in some ways we've kind of shamed men from doing those things, and that they should do the things that women do to express themselves. And because they're not easily adaptable to those situations, they're kind of left out into the cold. And I think another situation is one thing that I do like watching is, I don't really play a lot of video games, but I do watch Let's Plays, and seeing men get together and play a multiplayer game where they shoot each other. But in reality, it seems like it's a very important bonding moment for them, even though it's like from a perspective of a woman, why are these men just like, it's all just aggression, and it's I don't see the point of this must be making them more violent, when I think in reality the more men do that type of stuff, it's actually more bonding for them, and they have a positive way of connecting with each other, collaborating with each other. And it might not look the same as, when women bond with each other, but it's still bonding the same.
Yeah, you have a point. And to to the point that even those male typical behaviors, even true for all males. Take myself for example, I would say I'm an atypical male because there's so many things that appeal to men that doesn't really appeal to me. You understand? Sports, for example, sports is a huge thing for men in my country. I see no point in sitting down and watching football or just being involved in any kind of sporting activity. It just bores me. You understand? Men can get emotional over their team winning or their team losing, and I'm like, I don't get it. Same with video games. The men whose the lives, I know I have friends that are so into the video game and all that, but I'm like, nah, not my thing. You understand? But it doesn't mean that my predisposition is the default. I understand that my predisposition isn't sort of the default male predisposition to such things. There are a lot of men that really love sports and they would give a limb for it. You understand? There are a lot of men that really love video games and they're going to give a limb for it. And I also know some women who love football too, who love video games. But if you want to take it on an average basis, you see that more men are tilting towards the love of sports, video games, and all that stuff that women are. Doesn't mean that there are no men like myself who don't find those things attractive. So human nature is dynamic. We're a mix of. In fact, it is said that um, we are. Of course, we're more alike than we are different because we have. After all, we're human beings and we share the same DNA. We share the same genetic information. So find a lot of you're going to find a lot of similarities. We deal with the same challenges on the daily basis. So men and women are a lot alike. It is even said that there's a greater differences within groups than between groups. So there will be a greater diversity within women themselves than between the whole class of men and the whole class of women. You get? I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. That taking men as a whole, taking women as a whole, the differences between those two categories will be lesser than taking any two women. You understand? Even though they're women, you understand? Because after all, we're human beings, so we still share a lot uh, of the same challenges, and we still have to face and deal with them. Uh,
Yeah.
Coach Love, she's still
She's
doing
still
the
looking.
research. Go ahead,
But
Chloe.
this conversation is interesting because I actually did have a conversation about gender with a coworker of mine, and for some reason, we were talking about true crime. And he's like, I don't get it. I don't get why women love true crime. He's like, all of my friends' wives love it, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, I think I can explain. But before I gave that answer, but he was truly confused as to why do women like watching stories of other women being chopped up into pieces? Because it's mostly women as as victims. They will watch I've there are a few. Actually, recently, I actually watched the majority of the trial of Chandler Hansen or something like that, and who chopped up his parents because it's there's so much evidence in that case. It's kind of really sad. It's kind of obvious that the defense just does nothing and just lay down and let the prosecution just lay out all the evidence. But still, I was interested. I watched it, and there is that basic he just couldn't understand why women would even enjoy those things. And if you take a look at the all the different iterations of Law and Order, Law and Order SVU is the most popular with women, which is the sexual crimes unit. Sexual victims unit, right? And it's again, it's mostly depicted women as being the victims, and so there are things that kind of go both ways. And what I told them is that because mostly women are victims of those things, it's kind of it's kind of you're watching things that are somewhat relevant to you, and also if you're not typically exposed to danger, typically, like, how else are you going to understand the dangers that are out there if your life is mostly safe? So you watch weird messed up stuff kind of to balance it out. Like, for example, my mom would never watch that stuff because that stuff almost happened to her in real life, so it kind of balances it out in a way. But it's just, there are just certain things that I do think that I don't want to overlook of some basic, somewhat biological divergences that cause maybe certain behaviors to express themselves differently. Like you were mentioning before, violence versus reputation destruction. Men typically go to violence, and women tend to go to reputation destruction because, studies show men and women are average, are just as aggressive, but they just have to because of their physical limitations or advantages, they express their aggressiveness in different ways. So it is a male and human trait, but like, we have to pay attention to really what does it look like when men and women express XYZ emotion, and we have to be open up to acknowledge, oh, I think that they might be expressing themselves, but they might actually just do it in a way that it might be annoying or it might be inconvenient. I can understand why women would want a partner to want to watch the exact same movies that they watch and to cry at the same moments, but like, the things that the guy might cry at, they might be like, who the hell cares? Like, it's both men and women will be in situations where if the roles are reversed, they'll be kind of feel like the odd person out, and they wouldn't understand why this other person is into this, or they're just kind of there obligatorily of like, okay, I'm just going to be there to be supportive. But it's the same things aren't going to elicit, the same things might not elicit the exact same emotional response to a person.
Yeah, yeah. I think Coach Love is trying to share something. So, are you there, Coach?
I'm here. Thank you so much for your
Yeah.
patience in this. And goodness gracious, it almost doesn't seem exactly worth it as long as it took me to get this done. But hopefully, um, I can make this point. But before I go all the way there and change the subject matter, I want to jump in on something that Chloe said, and I appreciate it, that sometimes women do not understand how men are expressing themselves, but they are indeed expressing themselves. Um, and I think that is accurate. But that I think that's a part of the journey of positive masculinity. I think that women have as big of a role in positive masculinity as men do. Um, and so this is a journey of all of us. It might be um, about one of the sexes, they might be the target, but this is our journey. We are together, and we all play a part, either male or female, in this. Now, I tried to make this bigger, and I really don't feel like you can, and that I can any further. But hopefully that's a little bit better. And what I will do is give you this image so that you can put it in your Discord. But what you see here is a mother, and she is yelling at her son, and she says, "Stop. I can give you something to cry about. Boy, and man do not cry." Okay? So that's what she's saying. And then fast forward to when he's an adult. And now he's with his wife or a partner, and it says, "Why can't you just show me a tiny bit of emotions?" So I think the point that is being made there is that we are asking men to have and show their emotions, but at the same time, we are cutting them off at the knees when they're in their developmental stages, and it's time for them to grow their emotions and mature in their emotions.
Okay. But why is it important for the woman that he shows her some emotion? Why is she demanding that of him? Why is she? Why don't you just show me some emotion?
Well, I
What's
think
the
I
catch
hear
with
the
that?
what I'm saying is we are suppressing something that is already there, and when it is once the child matures or once the person matures, we're upset because they don't understand how to navigate them or use them or express them. We can't as a society say don't cry, don't show your emotions, and then on the other hand, when it's time to have access to your full range of emotions so that you can fully express yourself and help people understand how you're feeling. Say, why can't you do that when I've taught you not to do that? And that's what I'm saying that we're doing, and it feels like we're doing as a society. Not that men have to have more than whatever it is that they have. Whatever you have, you have. But if you have, I'm just going to say, five emotions, and I only make it safe and manly for you to express two, that's not okay. If you have 10 and I only make it safe for you to express five, then that's not okay. What I should be doing is making it okay for you to express the full range of them and giving you the tools, as it relates to Mr. Palu's point, to handle them in a productive manner. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, Mr. Pelu, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I want to say, I hear what you're saying, but like for example, with the picture, it reminded me because my mom always told me that gonna give you something to cry about. I remember her telling me that all the time. She first told me to give you something to cry about all the time. And but to speak to the other point, why can't you show emotion? I don't know. Women ask that. Do women really ask that? I never heard a woman say, "Hey, why can't you just show me emotion?" I've never heard a woman ask me that in my entire life. I never seen that. So
Right.
so
Maybe the people are right.
like how
Maybe you're
prevalent
doing a good job.
it's like pride that women are having. They're talking about it. It's like, oh, why can't these men show emotion? If this was going on because I've never personally encountered that situation in my life, and that's what I want to say.
And I can see why you wouldn't experience that because I have not experienced you having a block, but I have experienced people who are under equipped and under accepted emotionally have difficulty expressing themselves. And I want you to know what I'm saying. Under equipped and under accepted. So if I tell you that your identity um, is different just because you're having an emotion, that's not acceptance, right? At the same time, if you do not have the tools to express your emotions correctly, then that's okay. That's not okay. So I'm just asking us to equip them, and I'm asking us to accept what the person has inside and not strip them of their masculinity just because they have those emotions.
So,
Okay. Chloe, go ahead.
so I guess,
Right? But now, shouldn't they be quick to ignore people that are coming to bring it down, aka
Chloe,
haters,
your cat.
that are always going to be naysayers?
I want to hear you, but I can't.
yeah,
Mr. Pelu, your sound is not clear. Your sound is not clear. It's a serious interference with your sound, Mr. Pelu.
This behavior be seen as indecent, but should men themselves have the tools to recognize this behavior and they know these behavior and to shut out people who have a nefarious will or even if they don't do it intentionally, who have bad habits of emotional manipulation. Because I know that happens a lot. Because what I have experienced in my life is that women are very emotionally abusive. In my life, it's been times where I broke up with females and actually wrote me a whole apology letter on how much that were emotionally abusive to me. And it's a fact because women do. I noticed that women can't physically get you, but they do the emotional, they do emotional blackmail, emotional triggering. But should the men have the tools? But I was able to get out of the situation safe because I had the tools psychologically to cut her off. So it's to me still comes an educational tool on the man's part more than anything. Because if they're properly equipped to deal with their environment, including females, they'll be better equipped to be productive males and citizens in the world. Thank you very much.
So what I caught of that is, yeah, Paley was talking about emotional manipulation, and how like that is another reason why men should be more emotionally educated in order to navigate that. Because I remember, I think it was like a clip of a video or something like that with Alba and Preach, in which they were comparing what they had said with someone, and it was like with a female podcast, a female on her own podcast, and she was saying of like, you know, what's the problem with men being more emotional, and she was saying what Dr. Love was saying, like she wants men to be more vulnerable and to share more with women, but Alba was saying of like, there is a danger in that, because many men, when they had done that, they had used that against them. They used that to emotionally manipulate them, and they used that like as emotional blackmail. And when men divulged very, you know, deep, dark secrets, then they use that to get back at them in terms of reputation destruction. And if men get burned like that too much, even if a woman said, "Oh yeah, share your deepest, darkest secret," yeah, like if they share their deepest, darkest secrets, but they've been burned by the fact of there are consequences if things go bad when they do that, they're less likely to share in the future when they feel like those things that they do share, that, you know, maybe they are taboo for a reason. It might not even just be related to emotion, but like if they admit that they've maybe have done something that they're not proud of and they're really devastated by, and then, you know, they're sharing that, and then now the person's like, oh, this is something that it's a pressure point that they can push on them, because it does seem like women are more adept at understanding those different types of pressure points. Men are just like, in terms of, you know, being able to counter that, they are less equipped. And so like the only way that they can counter that is just not give out the information. Also, his name is Nikki.
Hi, Nikki.
Yes, just really curious, is that a rescue cat or not?
So he's a pandemic kitten. I also have his mother, and basically she was like a teenage mom. She the family that had her before she was 6 months old, pregnant with the litter, and so they dropped her off 5 days before she gave birth. And so, you know, I decided to pick him up and the mom.
Next time, Charles is going to do a expose on kitties of the pandemic.
They are different. He's special. He's very special.
Yeah,
Okay.
so him clawing his way like a Spider-Man. That's good.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I want to explore this idea that I'm just going to describe as toxic femininity, because that's what you're describing.
Yeah.
Those are undesirable traits that women are more likely to use, but it doesn't mean that men don't use them. But women are certainly more likely to use those because they get trained in those in that way socially. There's no school or anything like that, but because women fight in that way, then they experience it, so then they recreate it, so to speak. But that is definitely very toxic and not something that should be done. However, it doesn't mean that we don't want to create a space where men should share, because what we don't want, if you have the wrong person, you have the wrong person. So if you are not expressing yourself to your woman because you feel that she's going to backstab you in some way, you probably don't want that woman.
Well, I think that I do agree. I definitely agree with you that men need space, but and they need space outside of romantic relationships, right? Because like I said, like, the things that I grew up with, there are plenty of men's groups. There are plenty of, but it's not centered around like emotions or whatever. It's like they all like to go shooting, or they all like to do like these weird, little projects, or they're neighbors and they all like to sit in the alleyway and drink beer. Like those are spaces that
Mhm.
we need to accept. Like we need to like at least preserve and accept that that's where that's a men those are men's spaces where they can they should have spaces to bitch about women. They should. And
Mhm.
that's how they can ferret out like, oh, my girl does this and blah blah blah, and the guy's like, hey, that sounds messed up, I think this is going on. But the thing I worry about is that more and more, at least socially, at least seeing through like these messages through social media, they're trying to encroach on those spaces even more. And so like I do understand if there are certain places where like video games again, I've seen a lot of these topics go on, and I think even recently there was like this gaming channel that just got completely demolished in the sense of their views, because there was a woman on there who had a rant about sexism, and the whole audience, which is mostly male, hated it. But also they point that the misinformation about why she had that rant was more emotional, and that they were actually angry at her for a different reason, but she made it about sexism. And so it's a weird mixture of these spaces kind of feeling like some of these men feel like they've always had these spaces traditionally, but now through corporations and all these industries, well, we have to make it more inclusive, and you need to stop talking to other men like you do. You need to have a uniform way of expressing yourselves or participating in this community. And they're kind of feeling like their modes of communication are almost being phased out. And they get angry. And I think that, I understand the noble, like it feels noble to say like we need to make these spaces that have been mostly masculine more inclusive for more women. But I think that also causes more tension and more gnashing of teeth when we slowly are trying to phase out their kind of form of communication with each other to sort out things in their own way.
So I appreciate what you're saying. I just don't see that as making a deep carve out for toxic masculinity, because I think even in those spaces, men should be promoting positive masculinity, and that does not have to be to the chagrin of women. Positive masculinity is not necessarily pro woman, and toxic masculinity is not just against women, it is against
Well, I'm
manhood.
saying,
It is
I'm not even saying that they need spaces to particularly hate women. They just need, I think that the things that cause them to have a reaction to women is where they are being told to express themselves like women. And, that suddenly they're changing their whole mode of communication. And also like they can't, make certain jokes. I'll give you an example of, how certain things that maybe men are okay with saying with each other, which are completely friendly, but then a woman overhears it, or if the woman is a part of it, suddenly it's like the worst thing ever. And so I watched an interview about a trans man who basically was in a group of other trans men. And there was a younger trans guy who was talking about his horrible experience with his doctor, who said this very, very horrible thing to him. And so this younger trans guy who basically went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Oh yeah, and you're putting on a few pounds." And he's like, like you're maybe should hold off on those hamburgers. And then that younger trans guy went back to the group saying this doctor is this doctor is fat phobic, all these things. But this older trans guy said, he's treating you like a dude. He's doing exactly what he's being friendly with you. and guys give each other shit in those little ways that women may not be used to. Of, you know, like, it's typically not polite for women to say, oh yeah, you're getting a little fat, aren't you, and still be friends. Like, that's typically an insult. But this guy had to explain, this is how men communicate, and this is how they show they're being friendly and there, because it's like, hey, I can point out your flaws, you can point out my flaws, and we can have a laugh about it. And so this young guy who has been he has been you know cultured as a woman growing up. Now he's trying to get it, like, he's going into more masculine spaces, and he has to understand, oh, this is the new dynamic, and this is how they this might be a different way of how they express themselves. And so he had to explain, like, no, he's actually doing exactly, he's treating you like a guy, and that's exactly what you want if you are wanting to transition to be male in society. And so, and taking like that type of thing of where someone is feeling that transition, for men who have always been, men growing up like boys, and and growing up into men, and then having like these spaces, I don't think they necessarily have the language to say, no, we've already it's the way that we talk shit to each other, maybe to a woman sounds like, wow, these guys are insulting each other so much, it's such a toxic space. But they don't understand that these insults that they say to each other are landing differently for them mentally. Like, this is how, for odd reason, this is how they bond, at least in these spaces. And so when they try to make these spaces more inclusive and say, you can't joke you can't tell these jokes anymore, for them it feels like they can't really communicate in the way that they've kind of grown up communicating. They have to transition to the way that women accept, like positive communication. And I think that we kind of have to understand that there might be differences in how men can positively communicate with each other. And I'm not saying of like they're going to talk, horribly about the other gender, but if we kind of open up the box and hear how they're talking, but they're all laughing with each other, but the transcript of it sounds horrible to us, but we have to look at the result of that saying, but they're all having a good time. And they're all having a good time. And those conversations, or how they're bantering with each other, isn't translating to negative outcomes outside of that.
Mm-hmm. So I hear what you're saying. I'm making a guess, but to me, when I heard your story, it sounded like the trans man received that information from a man to a woman versus a man to a man.
Yeah.
And if that person felt the same gender, like, I don't know if you've had a conversation like this or something somewhere near this with a female person. I feel fat today. Oh yeah, I feel fat today too. We're feeling fat. Yeah, we're feeling fat today.
Yeah, but women tend to be more self-deprecating. Yeah.
Okay, hold on. And so in the banter, the girlfriend ends up calling one girlfriend fat, and she ends up agreeing, and it's a bonding. So they bonded together in that moment. So we do self-deprecating humor, but we might also say it to another person that we care about as well. But it becomes a we moment. So it's not that we don't do the same thing. It's just we do it in a different way. I think the issue is in that circumstance is that she heard a man calling her fat, and he received it as a female, so to speak. That is what I'm hearing is the issue, but I don't know. I can't say sure. I'm not in that person's head, but that might be that might be an issue, and I think it's worth exploring. That said, I do not think that makes places or anything like that. What I'm saying is we need to have the ability as a society to allow men space to be fully actualize, and that includes emotion. And we need to give them the tools in order to do so. So as a woman, if I'm raising a son, I should not minimize his range of emotion. I should try to understand him. And me trying to understand him and give him the tools to do so should not be seen as I am feminizing him. I should be
Hey, you mind
playing
if I do?
that role.
Okay, you mind if I jump in?
Yeah, go
Is my
ahead.
mic good now? My mic better?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, and thanks, Chloe. Like that was a good response for not being able to hear the mic, but that you gave, so I appreciate that, Chloe. But next thing, you said we need to equip these men to have a wider emotions. Why do you feel it's incumbent upon women to do that? Why is it not a man's space thing to train men to behave or to behave accordingly and be able to manage the emotions appropriately? Why, what is incumbent here on women to fill this task? Thank you.
I'm not sure if that was at me
Yeah,
or
that's
not, but
that was a deal.
Yeah,
You
it
basically.
was at you, Coach Love. You said because the way you said you was like we need to allow men to have the boys or the men to have this range of emotions or this like that. But when you say we now, where does the we come from? Is it we women? And if it's we women or we whoever, where does the impetus come from you to do that? Or not you, but as in the we that you're talking about, where's the impetus for that we to do the task?
so
Is that we up to the task, and why should and why should men accept this instruction from we? If that makes
so
sense.
so what I'm saying is I'm not saying to make a man have more emotions than he does. I'm saying if he does, it should be accepted. That's what I'm saying. So if you have what you have, whatever it is that you have, that's that's fine. What I'm saying is there should not be condemnation because it is there. So I'm asking us not to condemn someone and strip them of their masculinity just because they have that range of emotion. So I'm not trying to force that on them, but if they have it, they should not be condemned for having it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Coach Love. I agree, and I see your point. I see where you're coming from. In so for Chloe, I would say, yeah, your position is as if you get men.
It's
When I
go on.
when I look at my interaction with my my best friend, I would say I can't remember ever saying anything compassionate to him. But we're best buddies. I mean, yeah, we're friends for life. Where we can do anything for each other. You understand? And whenever he calls me, he's in Germany. He lives in Germany right now. Whenever he calls me or I call him, we always start off with insults. We always start off. If
Mm-hmm.
you were someone who did not understand the dynamics of our relationship, you'd be like, "What's wrong with these guys? Why are they just insulting each other?" More than half of the conversation is just insults and just being naughty with each other, but that is how we relate, and that is how we enjoy relating with each other. And it would be weird if we did it any other way. You understand? But so I wouldn't relate to my female friends in that way. I wouldn't relate to my female friends in that manner because I know that the dynamics are sort of different. So while we understand the need for men to show more emotions, we also need to understand that men they express their emotions in a totally different way. And those ways should be valid and accepted as well. You understand? I think that there's a tendency now to want to make the female perspective the default perspective in terms of how people should express themselves. So you should be compassionate. You should be. I should be. I don't know if you're getting what I'm trying to pass across. But hi, Harry. So that's just what I want to say. So go ahead.
I don't think that's acceptable. I do not think that we should make the female perspective the default perspective. I don't think that's okay. I think we can easily go beyond that. Hello, Harry. How are you?
Hi, Coach. Thanks for bringing me up, Charles. I appreciate it.
So I don't think that the female perspective is the default perspective. At the same time, I do think a healthy perspective is. And I'll say it once again. I'm defining healthy as to have a safe place to express a person's full range of emotions using using the tools, societal tools, without being condemned for doing so. So therefore, you should not lose your masculinity because you're expressive about your emotions. That should not be seen as demeaning.
I agree 100%. I agree. I really, really, really agree with that. So, Harry, welcome to the
Well,
conversation. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Charles. Um, Coach, unfortunately, in society today, and in the past for that matter, men are under this preconceived notion that, quote, and I'll use a terminology that my dad used to use on me all the time, is big boys don't cry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that when the way I was brought up, that was not up for debate. It was not up for discussion. If you cried, you were a crybaby. And for any circumstances, I'll give you a prime example of that. When my grandmother passed away, that would be my dad's mom. I remember being at the funeral home, and we were all standing up in, for lack of a better term, a reception line. And we had people coming up, I'm sorry for your loss, that sort of thing. And most of the people were, crying their eyes out, da 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 da. And I happened to glance over because I'm getting hugs from people that, oh, good Lord, I hadn't seen them in years and years and years, and they're all crying. And I happened to glance over at my dad, and he fired me the look.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, you better not break down right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to stand there and not show emotion as bad as I wanted to. And let me tell you, it was tough. It was tough to stand there because I knew that, how old was I? I was in my 30s then, I think. And I still felt that big boys don't cry thing coming from my dad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that has carried over. Even now, I find it, and I don't know how Charles and Mr. Palou feel. I still find it very hard to show intense emotions in regards to things like funerals and people being in the hospital in a bad accident or something like that. I feel like I've got to be the shoulder. I can't be the person that needs the shoulder. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm. It makes a lot of. I
You mind
think
if I jump in?
I think you made my point. I think you exacerbated my point that I made earlier and brought up something that Mr. Palou talked about. I forgot the painstaker. I think you or painstaker. You were
Yeah,
saying?
painstaker.
Okay.
Pains taker, 2 words.
No, being a painstaker, just being a painstaker in all the sense of the word, in the whole sense of the word of being a painstaker.
Basically, being the shoulder to cry on and not needing a shoulder to cry on is basically same thing you were saying. And what I'm saying is the fact of the matter is you felt that. You felt that, but somehow it was not okay for you to be expressive. And I'm saying, why not? Why can't you
Hey,
still
you mind if I jump in?
why can't you
You
still
mind if I
be
jump
a
in?
man and have that expression? Yes, please.
Oh yeah, I
You
agree.
mind if I jump in?
All right, Mr. Palou, go ahead.
Yeah. What I want to say real quick is that as being a painstaker and this and the third, right? Is two things, right? It's one thing to have these range of emotions, and one thing to express it, right? So I mean, yes, the man could have a wide range of emotions. I have a wide range of emotions that I run through every second. My heart beats every second differently. You know what I'm saying? My emotions are beating, but at the same time, I know it's for my learning. It's for my processing. I feel the sensation all the time, and it's my struggle to figure out why am I feeling the sensation at this time while I'm feeling it. So we have to separate having the emotions from expressing it, and what are the valid avenues for expression emotions. And I don't believe necessarily that men um, um, have the same avenues for expressing it, and I think they have to do a lot of the painstaking, even emotional painstaking. Like, because every second I'm taking an emotional pain all the time in all my thoughts, because emotions affect you all the time because you're always thinking, and and thoughts will stimulate emotions. Even when a tragedy happens, the reason why you're emotional about the tragedy is because you thought about the tragedy when it happens. So it still goes back to education and and understanding, and that's what I think the focus should be, instead of maybe being open. I think it should be more intensive education in these matters. Thank you very much.
I will agree that I think this goes for both genders of how healthy ways of processing emotion, healthy ways of understanding your emotions, and then this also gets into whether someone goes in like how they express their aggression, if they mismanage their emotions or they don't really know how to they project their emotions onto other people, or things that happen, and they cause things get worse, or they feed into a particular emotion because it makes them feel good or it makes them feel justified, and people choose to kind of like have like a runaway train. Like one thing that kind of was, I think I experienced this a little bit, but I read something of where the more that, like, when they had like that trend of, you would have like one of those like little stress squeeze dolls. Like when you're angry, you do this, you punch this, this blow up balloon, you do these things. But, research showed when people like participated in that, they actually were quicker to anger because their body started enjoying, expressing that anger. They kind of got addicted to it. And so like, and that, I think that goes for men and women, because I remember one point in time, when I was like a teenager, I had like a stress thing, and I just destroyed that thing. And as soon as that thing went away, when I stopped expressing anger that often, it kind of went away. And so so I think, to Palo's point, I think there does, that is an education that needs to be like, what are positive things that you can do with your emotions that don't lead to negative outcomes, that lead to positive, more stable outcomes that are better for you and society.
So I think this is where we all might be in agreement that there really should be um, positive, productive tools for expression of these emotions. What I'm wondering though is, are we giving them? And I'm going to ask you, Harry. Your dad told you what not to do, right? He told you you better not express yourself, but did he tell you how to navigate forward with that heartbreak that you were receiving?
Oh, never, never. This was, uh, I've said this. I know the other people on the panel haven't heard this, but I was raised in a Navy family, military
Mm-hmm.
family, born and raised from birth to my 18th birthday, I think it was. And it was always the big boy don't cry thing, but there was never, well, if you want to cry, go sit behind that tree,
Mm-hmm.
or go in your room if you want to do that, but don't do it in public where everybody can see it. And I think that's kind of, it's definitely old school, but it's something that needs to be addressed. Now I know my son, on the other hand, he's in his, what is he now, 33, 32, I can't remember. And he was raised totally different, to where he can express his emotions phenomenally easier than I can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's the way he was raised. He was not raised with the big boys don't cry thing. He was raised with the thing where it's okay to show some emotion. That that when he got into high school, and he's relayed this to me a few times, where and I did too, for that matter, when I was in high school and growing up, was the quote unquote men's locker room talk.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
he found that to be, and I agree with him on this point. He found that to be offensive because it's trashed out. But you've got all the guys in the locker room. They're oh yeah, this girl and this girl and this girl, and that sort of talk would go on, and that 99% of it is baloney. There might be maybe a little tiny grain of truth in there someplace that well the blonde I was talking about. Okay, well she was blonde, but the rest of the stuff is nonsense. Is nonsense. Now and yeah, he became offended with that, and I didn't find it when I was in school, and even when I got out into the job world, where you were working with a group of guys, they would talk much the same way, and I found it offensive. It's like, no, and it's an old adage, but the ones who talk about it the most do it the least, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But as far as feelings go, I mean, like in the job world, that's just not something that you don't show emotions in the job world. I mean, it's not. I've seen women that can do it. Men, on the other hand, you can't show emotions on the job. If you do, something happens and you whack your thumb with a hammer and you start crying about it. Oh no, you better not cry about it. You can do this and you can cuss and swear all you want to, but boy, you let them tears flow, you're going to catch a lot of flack from your fellow employees, and it really shouldn't be that way. It's not. I don't know. And there's no outlet for men, or at least that I'm aware of anyway. There's no place where men can go to discuss it. Well, how do I go about releasing my emotions in a reasonable way? Not
And I
going
think,
outside and breaking stuff because you're angry or something like that. But how do I go about doing that without going outside and breaking stuff?
and I think that's the crust of positive masculinity. And this is going to go all the way back to the beginning of the conversation where I was saying men have emotions that you guys just do, and there needs to be a way to express them, and you can't be stripped of your manhood just because you do. That is really the bottom line that's what I'm selling. That is what I'm selling.
Yes, Bradford, I will agree with your comment wholeheartedly. But
Mhm.
considering the time that I was raised in, which was the 60s and into the 70s, that's just the way things were. I mean, you had your parents were raised in the 30s and the 40s back then, and they were just going by the way they were raised. And I can't speak much further back than that because I really didn't know my great grandparents all that much. I can just speak from my point of view as far as how I was raised in a Navy family, and that's the way it was.
Did
And
you see that meme I put up earlier? Because that was the point of the meme that boys don't cry, and that is toxic. That's what parents have been teaching their children for generations, and that's not okay.
oh, without a doubt, it's not, and that's why my son was raised differently, to know that it was okay to cry once in a while. It was okay to come up and tell your dad, "Hey, I love you." It's okay to hug the neighbor's dad, for example. Which, oh God forbid I did anything like that. It just no, you didn't do that.
Crying,
God,
crying is not
Oh,
feminine. Crying is not feminine, and I think that is something that is being sold, and also a grown man, if a grown man cries, that doesn't mean he's a girl, and it doesn't mean he's a baby.
Yeah, Steve, welcome to the conversation. But before Steve just before he jumps in, let me just make this quick comment. So, Harry, I want to respond to your story and possibly give sort of a story that relates to it as well. But first of all, you know who is not who is always going to remember your son's age? Your wife. She is always going to remember that. She's not, she, so that's just by the wayside. Anyhow, so the story about you not being able to cry at your grandma's funeral with your dad giving you that look. I had a similar experience. When I was growing up, I was this little things could make me cry. I could cry at the slightest. I could always cry. But I was as I started growing up more and more and more, I just got to a point where I found it much more difficult to cry. I don't know where it came from, but I don't think it came from the home because I wasn't I wasn't ever told at home that boys don't cry. In the home that I was raised in fact, the kind of home that I was raised in was a very for an African home, it was atypical in the sense that there were no gender specific roles. I'm the first child, so I did basically all the domestic chores, the cooking, the cleaning, the taking care of children to go into the market and everything. My siblings do that too. My dad, we used to work outside where we're staying. When he comes home for the weekend, he cooks. You understand? So it was a very open and a very sort of gender neutral sort of upbringing. But as I grew up, I was I was deviating from that sort of. I was tilting more towards this typical masculine, what have you, behaviors that you will talk about, not crying, not being able to cry, and all that. And when my grandmom died, something very interesting happened because I was in school when I was told that she died. And she's the person that I loved most in the world. She was the person I loved most in the world. But when I heard that news, I couldn't cry. I really wanted to cry, but I couldn't cry. I just didn't cry. And I even wrote a poem about it that though I'm feeling this way, but why can't I just let it all out? You understand? But I did find myself crying maybe about a month or two later when I was lying in bed one day and I was thinking about her and all the emotions just overwhelmed me and I started crying, you understand? So my point is, where did that come from? For me, it wasn't from my home. Was it did I get it from outside influences? Or is it something that just innately um, expressed itself? I'm wondering in that regard. Then I have a question to ask. If I don't know if anybody has done this, but if women are trained or brought up in an environment where they are told that they should not cry, do they stick to it as much as you did, as much as men did, or are they still predisposed to be much more emotionally vulnerable in such situations? So, if your sister was brought up in that same situation, do you think that she would have held herself the way you held yourself, or at a certain point she would just, you know what, this isn't working for me, I'm just going to cry?
I think as you got older, it was okay when you were a kid, but as you got older and you were around friends and other people that were your age, um, if you're playing a soccer game, for example, and you fall down and you hurt yourself a little bit, what would the other guys on the team do if you were crying about it? Well, they'd probably give you a little bit of a hard time. So I think that part of that, as you got older, comes from a little bit of peer pressure, where the other guys, it's not okay to do that. Well, I'm not going to do it either. Does that make sense?
It's possible, or maybe it just came from me observing what it means to be a man from the general society. It might not be directly peer pressure, you understand, but definitely you have an idea from the way society functions of how a man is supposed to behave, how a woman is supposed to behave. So I think it's more in that sense that I sort of maybe absorbed it from the outside. But my second point is, if a woman was raised with the same conditions that you were raised, will she be able to hold herself as much as you were able to hold yourself, or would she at a certain point just, you know what, override that training and just cry?
I don't know because the women that I have been around have known have always been able to show their emotions um, better than men can, or easier. I should say better, easier than men can. It's more, for some reason, it seems to be easier for women to do that than it is for men to do that. And that's, I don't think it's anything that's ingrained in you. It's just something, like the way you were raised. It was okay when you were a kid, but all of a sudden when you got older, you found yourself not doing it. Women would be, it seems to me, would kind of go along the same lines. If you're raised when you're younger, that, oh, well, you're a big girl, you don't cry. Well, as you get older and you're around friends and other people and different relationships and stuff like that, wouldn't they realize too that it's going to be an okay thing to do at that point?
Yeah, makes
Uh,
sense. Makes sense.
I'll let,
Sorry, Chloe. Can Steve just go
yeah,
before
I'll let Steve go. Yeah, and then I'll say
Steve has
something.
been
How's
waiting?
everybody doing?
Oh, good.
Good. Sorry about earlier. I would have been on earlier, but my headset wouldn't connect to my phone, and I've got my head under a hood all day, so I couldn't like stop and do this. So I'm off of work, so I thought I'd get on real quick. But to address some of the, you got to know where this stuff comes from to understand how we're going to fix it. And Warren Farrell makes a claim in his book, The Myth of Male Power, that we have two stages of life. We have stage one and stage two. And stage one is pre-1900s, right? Pre-industrial revolution. And this is a period of time where men, for lack of a better word, were expected to die fairly consistently. If there's a war, men go off. We protected the homestead, we protected the kids, the wife, the family, the plot. And when you've got a society like where men are disposable, you create a society in which men don't get close to other men emotionally, which means that you should also not pay too much attention to them, so to speak. And then on top of that, you can't cry because when you're on a battlefield, the last thing that you've got time to do is coddle your buddy in the trenches. You know what I mean? So it was just a naturally ingrained part of war that kind of born this idea of what masculinity is supposed to be. When you go back to it and you think, okay, well, men are brutish, we're tanks, we kill, destroy, fuck, everything, right? That's kind of what we're known for. We're not known for our sensitivity. And I believe Warren Farrell's right about that. And then what happened when we moved into the 19th century or into the 20th century, and we started getting, women started getting more rights and more autonomy and more privilege. Men didn't move in with them. We kind of stayed behind. We hadn't been drawn into the 20th century at that point in time, so we didn't learn to change with the times. Because the downside of progress is you don't see it happening. And so now we're stuck in a place. Well, let me rephrase that. Now we're in a place where we're no longer stuck in the old paradigms of gender social constructs. You know what I mean? And now we're actually able to, raise our hand and say, no, I don't want to feel this way anymore. I don't want to go home and be so depressed or so angry that I take an hour-long shit so I can cry in the bathroom so nobody can see me. Or sit on your couch with a gun in your mouth. Because we don't want anybody to see what we're feeling. Because when you're the emotional anchor of your family, you can't let that down, because what's going to happen if you do? The whole structure of the family falls apart, because the anchor is no longer anchored to solid ground. And that was probably one of the hardest things for me to really read and comprehend, was that first and foremost, I wasn't the only man that felt like that. And that there were other men, and it was actually really common for men to feel like that. And literally, I sat in the truck I'm sitting in right now, reading that book, crying like I am almost right now, when I read that, because I had no idea that other men felt the same way. How fucked up is that? How messed up is that the rest of, like, half of society has no idea what their half of society is even thinking or feeling? And so luckily now we're in the 21st century, and we have these movements, and we have these different concepts of gender and what our responsibilities are. Men don't need to go to war in mass anymore. I mean, shit, most of our bombings are done at home in a building, unmarked building somewhere, and bombs drop in somewhere. We're all here in the safety of in our own land. Not to say that's honorable or anything, but you get what I'm saying. Is like, we don't have to march a battlefield and just die relentlessly and sacrifice our lives superficially for rich old men. And so now we've got this conundrum, like, okay, well, now we've got all this free time, and we can, oh, I got a cop coming, hold on. All right. Now we can actually, like, sit down and be like, okay, so I'm okay to feel these things, right? So who wants to listen? And then you just hear crickets, because nobody's used to that yet. Nobody's used to seeing a man cry. And quite frankly, it makes me even feel uncomfortable watching a man cry. And I'm advocating for him to cry. So how can we expect the rest of society to do the same if we can't step out of our comfort zone and realize that it's time to pull kicking and screaming men into the 21st century and say, okay, we got women's equality in the 20th century. Now it's time for men to catch the hell up and become emotional equals to women.
So let me
And
ask you this.
the best part about that is that we don't have to sacrifice continuing to fight and struggle for women's rights either.
Exactly. And I really agree with you, Steve, but this is a place where, as the only woman on the panel earlier, there was some hang up. And there was this idea that it was okay for women to be emotionally undone, but not okay for men. And I pushed back against that, and I got beat up about it, and I pushed back against it, and I got beat up about it again. And I'm still pushing back. And at
Charles,
that,
are you beating up your guests again?
not in a bad way. I enjoyed it. Don't, not in a bad way. It was perfectly kind while beating me up, okay? Very respectful, but while
I
beating
know, Charles. He's
Charles.
not going to be disrespectful. I don't think he could be disrespectful if he tried. It's just not in his bones.
No, Charles is a misogynist confirmed.
Sorry, what were you saying, Coach Love?
But yeah, I just believe, I firmly believe that it is perfectly okay and natural for a man to be emotional, and he doesn't lose his manhood in any way because of that. And he does not have to be less emotional than his woman. He doesn't. His woman can be less emotional than him, and it's okay. The relationship will survive. It'll be fine.
Well, that's true. That's true. It is to you. It's okay. To Chloe, it's okay. To me, it's okay. To Steve and Charles, it's probably okay. The issue that you run into is it's not socially acceptable.
And that is the crust of what I'm asking for with positive masculinity. I am asking for it to be okay. And the juxtaposition there was Charles was arguing for the standard to still be held, and I was saying positive masculinity allows for that, and we are not making that person feminine just because we allow for that.
Well, you can
I'm
still
gonna
be a man and cry.
right.
Yes,
I'm gonna interject
million
here,
cry.
and I'm gonna play devil's advocate for Charles a little bit here. I'm fine with everything that's been said, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we're moving forward in a responsible manner and
Mhm,
understanding what the consequences of that type of a world is going to be.
mhm.
I would like to see exactly what you just said because I am a human being. I feel the same emotions that you do. I look at my children and I love my children the same way that you do. I look at my wife and I love her the same way you would love your partner. There's no difference in the feelings that we both share. The only difference is the way we allow ourselves and the way we allow others to express those feelings. And
And
so
it
when we
should be
constrict
allowed.
someone, I'm sorry.
You, you, and all men should be allowed, and I think that is the cause for a positive masculinity. We should stop binding men and pretending as if somehow they're emotionally barren.
Right. Well, and there's some things that we need to do. Like first and foremost, is we need to start to dispel these myths. First and foremost, that men are some group of violent, rapist, misogynistic assholes. No, we're not. The vast majority of us are not.
Mhm.
Um, but we also need to take responsibility and own our shit too. We do a lot of harm, but the reason why we do, I believe, is because men do not have available access to supportive mental health care.
Well,
And if men had that, we would have more opportunities. And I should say, we need to make it more socially acceptable to also take advantage of those things
Steve,
so
I
that
feel so
men can get the
vindicated. You
help.
I feel so
You're,
vindicated.
yeah. Well, I missed a little bit of your conversation, so I promise I'm not picking sides. I'm just giving you my truth 100%. I was so pissed off I couldn't have joined earlier. I just like threw my phone on my toolbox and I just walked away because I didn't want to hear anything anybody was saying because I knew it would upset me. But it's this availability to proper supportive mental health care that is going to change the way that men and society begin to move forward with um, what really could be described as positive masculinity, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But there's also a part of me that I don't want to lose in that process. Like, I love being a tank. I love being able to, you cannot break me. You cannot, when I set my mind to something, you cannot stop me. Right. And I want to be careful how I move forward to make sure that I'm retaining those qualities about me, so that I don't lose who I am too at the same time. So, and a lot of men are scared of that. A lot of men are like, I don't know what to do. Like, I want to cry. I know it's right to cry, but I'm afraid of the repercussions of what's going to happen when I cry. But
Is there a woman that you would describe as a tank? Is there a woman? Like, could you think of one?
every woman that I know, they're just different concepts of the same construct. Like, my wife can deal with a lot of bullshit, like tons of bullshit. Like, she works in a male dominated industry. She goes to work every day. She doesn't complain. She gets shit done. I mean, she does more at home than I do. Like, like, when it comes to stuff, like, even she could be an emotional wreck and she's
Mhm.
still doing the same stuff, getting shit done. Right.
Hmm.
So, and if you meet
She's
her, she's very,
emotionally balanced, you don't say.
yeah, she's really quiet. She's really, like, she's very, like, very, very quiet. She's got a very quiet voice, a very quiet positive and soft demeanor, but that woman will roll over everything and anything to get shit done for her family. Me, I don't have those skills, so I'm just going to knock the building down. But because that's my skill set. But I am learning to change that slowly, because like I've said before, I've been going to therapy for about 6 months now, and I'm starting to understand that it's okay to cry. It doesn't rob me of anything. It doesn't rob me of any masculinity, because I dare anybody to look at me and the way that I look and the things that I do and call me a pussy or call me weak, because I'll stop crying and beat the shit out of you and then go back to crying after I'm done.
So this would be male humor right here. This is male humor, right? Steve.
No, I would do that.
No,
totally
Steve, how did a piece of shit like you get such a great woman? And men would, right? Right? See, there you go. I can.
It took a lot of practice.
That is male humor. And then the man would say, "Shut up, you got lucky. Who'd you pay off?"
Oh, I didn't get lucky. I had to work my ass off for this woman.
There you go. There you go.
If anything, she got lucky with me, because it could have been a complete crapshoot for her.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where I just came to the realization that no matter what happens, even if I have to cry, I'm still a man. I'm still masculine. I'm still tough. I'm still a tank, but sometimes you got to unload a little bit. Heart gets heavy, you got to unload a little bit.
It's way too heavy. That joke was actually for Chloe.
Yeah.
I cursed and everything. Look at there.
Yeah. What I was thinking of as many different things, but it kind of seems like it's the circumstances of which, if an anchor is needed at the time, and that's how, like, men and women are both they do have elements of masculinity and femininity. So, like, when Harry is talking about, like, essentially being raised by parents who grew up in the Depression, having an emotional breakdown isn't going to, like, help during the Dust Bowl, right? And so I think that people learn and basically for, like, it's they evolve their strategy based on a very specific circumstances in which that strategy, it works out better for them, because they don't actually have the luxury of engaging in those emotions. I mean, like, who's going to go to a therapist during the Dust Bowl and during the Depression? Like, they have to get things done. They have to support their families. And so they, survival is more paramount. And so that you don't really get to it. And especially, like, in war, it's, you have to, you have the mission, you have to fight for your brothers in arms and all these types of things. And you are so mission focused that you don't have the time to focus on your emotions. But now that the world is much more developed and that we actually have more time and we are communicating more often, and we are, in a way, we're becoming more social, like, when I have to, engage with people, I'm engaging, I have to understand that I'm engaging with people who have emotions, who have a perspective, who have, fears and concerns, and I have to recognize those things and manage those things when I'm talking to them. Then that skill set, now in a way, we kind of have the luxury to engage in those things and have everyone engage in those things, now that everyone isn't necessarily in survival mode anymore.
I'm sorry, but Steve, you actually posted this, and you can bring it up when you're ready. Can you see it? There you go. Steve, can you share about this, please?
Yeah, that's kind of a statement about how society refuses to give any credence to the fact that men need mental health help. It's also kind of it's also a statement about men can be drowning in all these things, and we aren't even allowed to ask for help, because we'll just get a pat on the back and say, "Hey, suck it up. It's got to get done. Do it." But that doesn't actually help what we're going through.
And so the first quadrant on the left, it says, at the top, it says men's mental health. And then The second quadrant is society, and the hand is basically barely reaching out towards the person who's drowning. And then in the third quadrant on the left, it says, be a man. And the person is really going under, and they're giving them a high five. And then the fourth quadrant, you clearly see that the person is going under. And for me, I just see, I'm seeing and I'm hearing the suicide rate for men in this example.
Yeah,
I
that
felt,
was
I
really
felt
interesting
that
to
way.
touch on.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So great conversation so far. So Coach Love, don't don't mind me. I always love to poke and prod and test ideas. In fact, that's what this channel is about: testing every idea. Even if I agree with you, I'm going to push you to make sure that you give us your best argument. You understand?
Charles is
Not
a
just
serial poker.
Well, you know what? It actually has been great. I'm going to believe Chloe, and she said you're a serial misogynist. I'm going to believe her.
Believe all women.
So there you go. But I have to say, I am absolutely thankful that we are getting down to brass tacks and discussing positive masculinity, and really breaking down those barriers. That is what I'm excited about. And I thank you, Charles, for your picture. It has been a banner week. And I can honestly say, every man on this panel has submitted their picture for masculine mugs. I thank you. Please,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes.
That's a scary thought.
No, it's a brilliant and wonderful thought. It's just great. I am eternally grateful, and I think we're doing a very good thing for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and thanks to you and Steve for for coming up with something like that. It's brilliant. So maybe in the next one is you're going to do something for women, because we also have to appreciate them as well. So this
Absolutely.
conversation is going on for about 2 hours 30 minutes. I want us to round up in the next 4 minutes, because it's very late here and I have to go to bed. So well, Coach Love, thank you very, very, very much for your comments. They have been wonderful and they have been enlightening. At least, well, you've made me see some things. I would say that the most I have gotten out of what you've said so far was, you know, it's okay when a man is vulnerable. It shouldn't make him any less of a man. You are not saying that a man should become a vulnerable mess. But if that is his nature, then it shouldn't make him any less of a man. That's the summary of what I think you've been saying since. And I hope I'm correct in that analysis. Um, so let's go this way. Mr. Pelu, let's hear from you, then Steve, Harry, Chloe, then Coach Love is going to close for us. So let's go.
Anyway, um, you hear me, right?
Yes.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. So anyway, yeah, it was a great conversation, and thanks, everybody for coming on. Like I said before, I mean, I think, I believe in positive masculinity, but I think masculinity was always, to me, it was always positive in terms of being a gentleman. For me, positive masculinity. If you, without anybody else telling me anything, if I just heard the word, my first reaction is being a gentleman. And I think being a gentleman has always been the style. It's classic. It's never gonna go away. And I'm a gentleman forever. Anyway, so that's my take on positive masculinity. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Pelu. Steve.
Um, Normally I would defer to the ladies, but I've got to get going, so I'm going to be really quick. I think a major thing that we need to acknowledge is that men, not women, have to produce the start of this change, because it's going to be our peer group right? It's going to be men that need to be convinced that it's okay and we should advocate for men to cry, right? We've got to make our voice very loud and say, you know what? Men can cry. If you need to cry, you come to my house. I will let you cry on my couch. I won't say a damn thing. Whatever, it's okay. Come to my house if you can't come somewhere else. You know what I mean? And second of all, and most importantly, and I really don't want this to be overlooked, we have to make sure that while we're in the process of building men up, we are not tearing women down. Um, we cannot ask women to kneel so that we can feel taller. We need to be uplifting both of them. We need to be bringing everybody up. And it's crazy that people think that we couldn't do that. It's more than possible to do that. This is not a binary. They're not even you know what I mean? These things complement each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want people to understand that, you know, men's mental health is important. We needed to start dealing with those because some people have sons, and the suicide rate is not looking good for men right now. And we need to also keep moving forward with women's equality, and we can never forget that we all share this planet, and we need to make it a livable space for everybody, and to hold our sisters up and stand up for them, and let their voices be heard when they have an issue, and we need to address it with them. We need to stand with them.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Harry.
I'm going to agree with what Steve just said. That was interesting and just well put all around. And I want to thank Charles for allowing me to come up and run my mouth for a little bit. You know, I hope I interjected a little bit of intelligent conversation to it.
For sure.
Coach Clark, you know, I love talking to you, and I wish you would do more streams more often.
Well,
Now,
thank
you, Harry.
I will defer to the lovely ladies up in the middle and the right side.
Thank you, Harry. So, Chloe.
Yeah, I think that obviously men should be allowed to express their emotions, and I think one of the important things is allowing them to have their own spaces and not denigrating those spaces, not trying to tear them down or mock men for being really passionate about something, which is honestly, it is what I seen. Like, oh, like, why do they care about this, and why are they they act passionate about it? And sometimes I've seen that mocked, and I don't like that. And so I think, yeah, making sure that they have the space to, you know, express themselves, and then, you know, grow emotionally so that they can make other emotional connections and learn and grow and be more well-rounded people. And I think we need to basically integrate more men into society, because I think just in terms of the numbers, you know, the more men that we kind of let fall out of society, that's when you see the negative effects, like the toxic masculinity. And if they feel disconnected from community, from their families, from actual human connection, they have no incentive for creating positive things in the world, because they don't feel that community to receive it back. And so I think we need to definitely make sure that they're more integrated in society, which includes accepting their emotions and their outlets of emotion.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Chloe. Thank you. Coach Love, your turn.
Yes, I'm just going to say I've appreciated you, Charles, as the host, giving us this opportunity to have this conversation. It's been beautiful. I thank the audience for rocking with us. You guys have been here for, 2.5 hours. So I want you to know that I appreciate you for that. And my final message is that we are better together. We all have a role to play, and we just need to stand up and do our part, each of us, so that we can have a better society where everyone feels emotionally acknowledged and safe. and fully actualize.
Yeah. That's a powerful statement. By the way, guys, you can go subscribe to Coach Love's YouTube channel. I think it's called Coach Erica Love, right?
It is.
Coach
It,
Erica Love.
was-
Okay,
yeah.
so she has a channel too, and I'm sure you're going to find conversations just as good as this there. So please do subscribe to her channel. So thank you very much, guys, for coming. Devon would always say, I have to give my own statement as per what I think. So, in my opinion, this is what I think. I think that men and women are the different and they have different ways of expressing their emotions. However, I also think that there are negative societal pressures on men or expectations on men that need to change. For example, I saw a video a few days ago on Facebook where they were fighting. Two women were fighting a man, and they sort of overpowered the man, and he was on the floor. And they were beating on him, and people around were just laughing. And someone wrote in the caption that this man's this man has been he has been disbarred from being a man or something of that nature. You understand? But
Hmm.
if that was happening to a woman, if two men were onto one woman, nobody would be laughing. Nobody would take that as a joke. You understand? People are going to like what's going on. Even in Africa, people are going to come out and defend the woman. You understand? So why is it okay? Why has society made it seem that it is okay for a man to get a beating from two women, and then still denigrate the man for getting the beating, while it is not okay for a woman to? You get that? So we need to
Thank you,
change
Charles.
all
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah, we need to change all that. You understand? As human beings, we have to value each other just as much, even though we know that we have different ways of expressing ourselves. But there's some things that we should not just tolerate just because this person is a man. You should tolerate, no, this person is a woman. You shouldn't. So I think these conversations are incredibly important if we want to move in that direction. And I believe that very slowly and steadily we're going to move in that direction because from Harry's own testimony, from his own experiences, we saw how he was raised, and we saw how differently he raised the son. So that's progress in the right direction, and I think we're ultimately going to get better and better and better with it. So that's it, guys. Thank you very, very, very much for coming to the stream today. I really appreciate you guys, and I hope to talk with you guys soon in another live stream. So it's goodbye for now. Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye bye for
Charles.
now. Thank you. Bye bye.
Hey, my man. Good boy.